Let's go live to Ottawa, where Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is speaking to reporters. Let's listen in.
Murder are deeply troubling. Of course, this is the 5th police officer murdered since September, and it is part of a 32% increase in violent crime that has happened over the last 7 years, a 92% increase in gang-related murders. In this particular case, the accused was out on bail after having been allegedly committed similar violent offenses, including offenses with firearms and offenses against police officers. He, according to media reports, has previous convictions that are similarly violent. I regularly meet police officers across Canada who tell me that they often have to rearrest the same person in the same day, arresting a violent criminal in the morning and then again in the afternoon after they have been released on bail. These easy catch and release bail policies are found in Justin Trudeau's Bill C-75, a bill that makes it much easier to get bail, even in cases of repeat violent offenders and even in cases where the allegations against the newly arrested offender are serious and dangerous to the public. So Conservatives are calling on the Trudeau government to reverse its catch and release bail policy, to allow for prisoners who have been arrested after a long rap sheet of previous offenses for violent crimes, and we believe that they should stay in jail until their trial is complete and until it can be assured that and if convicted, that they should stay behind bars until such time as it can be assured to all of us that they are no longer a danger to the public. The Trudeau policy on crime has given us a 32% increase in violent crime, 92% increase in gang-related crime. And what has he done? Well, the Prime Minister, in response to all that, has decided to fearmonger against hunters, against rural Canadians, by pledging to ban hunting rifles. There is exactly zero evidence that banning hunting rifles will combat any of these crimes. What we need to do instead is keep the small number of repeat, habitual, violent offenders behind bars, and when they are newly arrested, deny them bail until such time as their trials are completed, in cases where the accused has a long track record of previous violent convictions. Conservatives believe that every Canadian has the right to be safe, that our police officers need all the support they can get in order to provide that safety. We believe that everybody deserves to live in a safe community and that they deserve to enjoy the security of the person that is guaranteed by our Constitution. We're not talking about minor offenders who make a small mistake in their youth. We're talking about the repeat violent offenders that are taking the lives of our people, that are engaging in repeat carjackings, stranger attacks, and in the worst cases, killing of police officers, cases that have become all too common over the last several years. So Conservatives are going to demand the government reverse course, protect our streets, make our Canadian people safe, and that is what we will achieve when we are in government. I'm happy also to receive your questions today on the chaos at our airports and on our airlines as Canadians once again are faced with horrific delays, their vacations ruined, and sometimes losing money and time as a result. We think that Canada deserves better, and I'm happy to take your questions on that and any other issue. Thank you very much, and I now open the floor.
We'll now start the question period. As usual, one question, one follow-up. Nous allons maintenant commencer la période de questions. Comme d'habitude, une question suivie. We've been advised that will be time for 5 questions today. We'll start questions in the room, and if time allows, we'll go to Zoom.
Stephen Hoff from the CBC. The Competition Tribunal has ruled that the Rogers-Shaw merger should be allowed to proceed. Do you think allowing this merger is a win for Canadian consumers?
Well, I have very serious concerns about more consolidation. We need more competition in our telecom sector. We don't have enough competition. We saw that with the Rogers shutdown that occurred, I think, 7 months ago now. We need, Canadians need to have more choices. When the previous Conservative government was in place, we put in place a policy that required there be 4 competitors in every single marketplace, which proved to reduce prices and increase service. We're going to be looking very carefully at the tribunal's ruling before pronouncing our final position on this. But our purpose in all telecom policy is more competition and choice so that we can have lower prices and better service for our consumers.
Okay, and the government has announced a delay while it works to make changes to the law around medically assisted dying to allow those with mental illness access to the program. Do you think medically assisted dying should be accessible to Canadians who suffer solely from mental diseases?
No, Conservatives do not believe that medical assistance in dying is a solution for mental illness. Conservatives believe that we should provide mental health care to people to improve their quality of life, help heal the psychological wounds that are afflicting them, rather than giving up. And we're very worried about the slippery slope that we see. We see now cases where, certain groups are advocating that small infants be given medical assistance in dying. Obviously, they could not consent to that. We see our Veterans Department telling our heroes that instead of getting the services that they deserve, they should consider ending their own lives. We have the CEO of the Mississauga Food Bank saying that she has people coming into her facility asking not for food, but for help ending their lives, not because they're sick, but because they can't afford to eat. And I believe that we've gone down a slippery slope, and this has been extended far beyond its original purpose. My belief is that we should try to give people lives that they believe are worth living, rather than telling them to give up on life altogether. Life is a precious thing, and government should work with people to give them a life worth living rather than telling them to give up. Thank you.
Kevin Gallagher with CTV National News. Good morning, Mr. Poilievre.
Good morning.
So the United States has recently put in an order that would require COVID test results for those traveling from China. Would you want to see Canada follow suit? Where would you stand on something like that?
Well, Conservatives are following this very carefully, and we know that the case numbers in China have exploded over the last several weeks. We haven't yet decided whether we're going to call for the government to impose a mandatory test or vaccination at the border for incoming Chinese flights from China. But we will watch it very carefully, and we'll base our position on science and numbers. As you recall, 2 years ago, we originally said the border needed to be closed to China after COVID began. The government refused to do so for, I think, over 60 days. We were listening to the data at that time, and we're listening to it now. But at this point in time, we're not making a public statement for or against mandatory testing at our ports of entry from China. We will keep you posted on our position, though.
During your leadership campaign, you advocated for replacing the governor of the Bank of Canada. Is that still your position? And if so, who would you like to see leading up the Bank of Canada?
So I believe that, let me just recap why I took that position. The governor of the Bank of Canada printed $400 billion, he along with his predecessor, even while inflation was rising. He continued these policies while inflation was reaching or exceeding its 2% target. During that time, we saw the single biggest increase in housing prices in modern memory, 50% increase in average house prices across the country. We also saw Canadians take on massive new debts in order to afford those houses. He then told Canadians that interest rates would remain low for long. They had no worry that rates would ever rise. And so a lot of Canadians took very large variable rate loans in order to take advantage of that promise. And now that promise has been broken as rates are rising faster than at any time in modern memory. If a waitress doesn't do her job, well, she gets replaced. The same is true of a barber or a trucker or any other Canadian. I believe that that is the same rule for the governor of the Bank of Canada. He will be replaced with someone who has experience in the central banking system that will have as his singular objective, or his or her singular objective, to keep inflation at the 2% target while protecting the financial stability. And I think that is a reasonable thing to request. We're suffering very serious consequences as a result of Justin Trudeau's overspending. I will have a bank governor who is independent from me. The problem is that this bank governor was not independent from Justin Trudeau. He publicly endorsed Trudeau's spending policies, which is not the role of the governor of the Bank of Canada. He's supposed to be in charge of monetary policy and not fiscal policy. And he printed the money to fund those deficits. And he did so in an inflationary environment. That is why I believe he needs to be replaced with a governor that will keep inflation at 2% while preserving financial stability.
We've been listening to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre live in Ottawa, speaking to reporters on a number of issues. We'll have some of that throughout the morning.